Bench Opinions. Three idiots with amateur analysis.
Welcome to another episode of Bench Opinions, everyone. It is Monday, Tuesday for the people listening, joined by Dominic, Klaus, and myself after another weekend of Championship Rugby. Springboks beating Australia 30-22, and Argentina, thankfully, beating New Zealand 29-23.
It's good thing you've come super prepared into this podcast.
I don't think it's fair because, I think when other podcasts, I'm going to say proper podcasts do this, they've got probably a screen or script or something like that with just some headlines that people can just, because I'm telling you that they're not memorizing all of that stuff.
Oh, no ways.
No. So
we need to invest in a teleprompter.
Well,
we need a lot more subscribers until we invest in teleprompters.
I'd love a studio.
A stew.
Yeah, that would be sick.
I'd like to have 2 more cameras so that we can each have our own camera.
Yeah.
Anyway.
If you would like to grant us those wishes, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.
And maybe we start a Patreon where people can just send us money.
That felt like a good way to fucking just remind people.
Yeah. Let's start with South Africa against Australia. We'll talk about the game. We'll unpack some of the stuff for the series coming up against New Zealand, the squad that was announced. We'll talk about Nthlabakanya's, I don't even know what you would call it, incident with the anti-doping commission, and then we'll also talk about Argentina and their victory against New Zealand. Where does this leave New Zealand, and where do we think the Rugby Championship goes from here? Let's start with South Africa, Australia. After last week, what do we think of the game and the performance?
Before the game, it was a rainy Cape Town, so the conditions itself were pretty tricky. The ball gets quite muddy and slippery in that regard. So, interesting conditions for everybody to play with. The running rugby then obviously gets dialed down a bit. You saw the Boks revert back to their old sort of strategies of sort of tightening it up. Lots of kicks, which was actually doing quite well for us last week when we did it in the first 22 minutes when we scored all of those tries. So you saw the Boks going back to the tried and tested DNA. But Australia's back, hey. They are so good and they are so dominant in their not only in their tackles but also in their running into contact. They ran over us the entire time and we were always on the back foot. And when they get those dominant hits, they're so good at then pick and drive, and they're catching us offside. We get penalties, and then they kick to touch. I think they could have kicked to poles personally, even though I don't like it when teams kick for poles. But I think they should have taken a couple of points when they were on offer, and they might have actually gone back to back there. Unfortunately for us, fortunately for us, that's not what happened. But the Boks struggling there a little bit, not really finding their groove.
No, Dom, how did you see the game?
Yeah, I think Australia's, it's strangely now after all the happenings of the weekend, I feel like Australia, the one team that seems to be furthest on in their evolution all of a sudden. It's like they've been kick up the backside. Someone's pushed a fast forward button where we were talking about them even sort of just before, I think even more so before the November test series, where we were all saying, where's Australian rugby going? What is it going to do? They managed to pick up a good win against England, and then you start to think, maybe there's something coming along, and the showing in the British and Irish and Lions tour. It's just like Joe Schmidt's managed to, it's like Adam Sander and Click, and he's been able to fast forward there, and all of a sudden they just look a crazy unit. And of course, there's some youngsters in there. There's quite a few youngsters in there. Unfortunately, Wright getting injured, tearing his ACL, so he's out for a long time. He's looking like arguably the best fullback in the world at the moment on form. But I think it does just like all of a sudden we were talking about coming into this tournament. Where do we see Australia? What would be a good showing for Australia? And I'm starting to think to myself, there's an outside chance they could win the whole damn thing at this rate with the way the results have gone, and that speaks volumes for what the show they put on. However, I have to say that I think it's very impressive that South Africa managed to get the job done. I think even though we didn't do it in the most impressive manner, I think you can't take that away from the fact that reeling under a lot of injuries after a shock defeat, they managed to just tick the box, get the points, albeit I think they missed a little opportunity to get a bonus point there late on, but they managed to get the win.
Yeah, they did. And just quickly about touching on Australia again, and what's so positive about it is that you're seeing a lot of, you mentioned it, young players and star players coming through, really guys with a lot of talent and exciting young players coming through. And I think that's probably what was missing. Maybe a few of them aged out, and a few of them are going to age out. Like I think he was Joe Schmidt said that he's not going to close the door on James O'Connor coming to the World Cup, but that's not going to be where the focus is for Australia moving forward. They've got so many exciting young players coming through. Let's talk about South Africa and what we think changed from the week before. Obviously, a much more settled team in the one that he chose, very experienced, and obviously one big change, which I think showed dividends, was Handré Pollard back in the squad. Kicked all his kicks, and also, I guess, managed the game quite well. Who else do we think sort of brought some stability back to the team?
I think even though he made a couple of like dumb errors, I think Marco van Staden had a barnstorming game. Like he really led from the front. He sort of took on that role that Sio Kolisi or Peter Steph de Toit would take on, in terms of like, I'm going to show everybody like this is the standard we need to meet. He was that guy. He was that talisman in the team. And even with like, he did some weird things, like he ran around the back of a ruck and then started pulling the one dude's leg and stuff like that. It was like very evident penalties that were then given away in pretty key moments. So like it wasn't a perfect performance by him by all means, but I think he was pretty good. I thought it was very unlucky that Jean-Luc Depree didn't get his opportunity. He was obviously sick. It would have been very interesting to see what he could have done. 8 years since he last started in the Springbok jersey. But Kwagga Smith actually stepped up a lot from his performance last week, where he really just dropped the ball, quite literally. He, even scored his own try.
Yeah.
Had a couple of rips, a couple of turnovers. So I thought he played very well. So the loose trio, I think, were pretty decent.
I think you're also starting to see, and I'm interested to see how Rassie kind of responds to this, because Eben came in on the second half, was phenomenal. Cheslin is just someone that just plays with such consistency. I also felt like generally what people that we sort of associate with the last two World Cups that have came back into the fold for this game stepped up largely, which is something maybe that goes against what I've been saying, where I've been saying, hey, we need to bleed new players, right? So that's good to see. I think we can get into moving forward and the traveling squad in a bit. But I wonder if this is not maybe going to snap Rassie back into trying to find his best 15 for the next period of time, maybe for the rest of the Rugby Championship, and really stick to that, and maybe divert a bit away from this chopping and changing, looking at two different squads, which on the one hand is innovation, but on the other hand, I think when you're trying to transition might cause a bit of issues. And I think the game proved that if you really just look to fill each position with arguably on paper your best player, you're probably pretty well set up to go and get a win. And I think Delendi coming back in, Cheslin being there, Eben coming on in the second half, Ergis Snyman I felt had a really nice game as well. I mean, he's just such a presence. And Pollard, I mean, can't say enough about him. I think I'm hoping on the one hand, but I also think there might just be a case of let's pick our best 15 from here on out and try and win rugby games.
Grant Williams also had a really good game.
Yes.
Really good up box kicks, keeping pretty close to the touchline. And then just good communication with the backline in general.
Yeah. Let's get on to like the gameplay. We've been questioning where Rassie is taking the Springbok game, the style that they play. He was vocal in the week leading up to it, I think, that he doesn't see this World Cup being won with the style that Australia is currently playing, which is ironically seemingly what we reverted back to a little bit during this game because of the conditions, which was kicking high ball, and trying to use that to your advantage. So he's clearly stating that they are going to continue with the Tony Brown version of attack at least. What is our thinking on defense though? Because it did seem like Australia very easily unlocked our defense still. The reads we were making weren't the right ones. Australia very easily broke the line, and it seemed like it was the first time that you could see like there's a massive gap from the Jacques Nienaber days of how we defend.
our defensive structure is a press defense, right? It's a rush defense. Even bring your wing in and try and cut off the outside pass in order to smother them, and then sort of use your defensive line as almost like an attacking sort of weapon. The problem is you are going to concede a little bit if they do manage to get the ball out to the wing. But the most important thing about having that rush defense is everybody needs to be in towing on the same line, right? And I think this is what Dominic also alludes to the whole time, is like there's very little cohesion if you're chopping and changing the team so much. So your partnerships are not as strong as they could be if you had one like solid team who has a good understanding of how the structures work. And I think that's where we get caught out, is that we sometimes have a disconnect where some guys are going, I'm going to make this tackle, rush up too far, create a gap, and then it gets passed around. And then we don't have the guys folding around to come cover it. You saw that quite a bit with, they seem to be targeting like Ches and Colby's side a little bit. That side got quite a lot of traffic. And I know Dominic actually said it during the game, like Moody didn't have the greatest of games, but a lot of the mistakes that he made were also mistakes that were made by him having to run all the way from his right wing to the left wing to try and make a cover defense at speed, missing a ball, tapping it on, missing the ball completely, them scoring a try and stuff like that. So there's obviously something not working in the communication in the defensive line. It obviously can work. We've shown that it can work. They just need to find cohesion.
Is it a case of it just needs time? You know, I know they've actually been together in this unit, at least with the coaching unit, for a little bit, but they haven't necessarily played that many games. You know, we had that end of season tour last year. We've had July tests, and this is the first rugby championship. Is it maybe a case of we'll see this develop towards the latter stages of this tournament and during the November tests?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of question marks generally also speaking about what is the dynamic between all the four teams now. You know, we're through the first 2 game weeks. Every team has won a game, right, in the rugby championship. So it's also difficult. I mean, we spoke about that loss to Australia in the first game week and said, you know, there could be a chance that this is just a one-off and it was a bad day at the office for the Springboks. And that's why I kind of mentioned this factor of the Wallabies maybe looking like one of the team that probably has their backs up the most and feel like they have momentum going into the rest of this tournament versus the rest of the sides. Of course, Argentina beat the All Blacks in Argentina, we'll get to that now, but I think it's so hard for us to, like, we've lost one to Australia. We've beat Australia once. I wouldn't say comfortably, but we got the job done, I would say, clinically.
I was quite concerned at the end.
I think
with like 20 minutes to go, I was like, we didn't look like we ever were giving it up, but I was sort of like, we're also not leaving them behind. You know, there was never a point where we were really clear.
Which I think speaks for Australia again as well a lot. Yeah. So what I'm trying to get to is that I there's so many question marks to answer, and within the space of all these question marks, I don't know if we don't need to try and form some sort of base and some sort of level of confidence in the side again after losing that first game to Australia, coming off 3 relatively easily test matches as in preparation. If we don't really need to try and just batten down the hatches, and maybe that's what we end up doing, because I think in order to get, you know, the last World Cup win is quite a long time ago now, you know, so I think all the confidence and all the class that we maybe felt coming out of that with the players feeling like, okay, well, we've got the world at our feet, maybe that's diminished a little bit. It definitely diminished after the loss to Australia.
But I mean, we've won 9 out of the last 10, so
exactly.
We only lost 1 game.
Yeah,
was that loss so earth-shaking that it really could diminish confidence that greatly?
But it's not just that. It's like even against the Italians, it's not like we ran away from them either. You know, it was a bit of a grind. I mean, the loss against Australia was quite devastating because of the way that we played in the first 20 minutes and then went away in the 2/3 of the game. And then this game, we didn't run away from them, even though we thought, you know, if we bring all the experienced guys back, we would. So I think that's more the issue. It's not like, oh, okay, well, you know, it's 1 loss out of 10, it's fine. It's like everybody else is catching up, and we don't have that jump in class that we used to have. But that goes for all teams. Like everybody seems to be playing much better. I mean, as you said, we'll talk about the Pumas. I mean, they're also a much better team than they used to be. Or the All Blacks are a worse team. That's up for discussion, I guess.
maybe it is. I mean, no one would ever imagine this, but maybe it is South African fans being sort of just put back slightly in our place. Australia has so often over the last 5 years been a bogey opponent, even when we've played well. Obviously, in the years that preceded Rassie, we weren't playing well and we drew a couple with them. But it's always been, whether it's home and away, a tricky opponent. So maybe we also have to have a look at ourselves a little bit and say we probably didn't give them enough credit going into the first game and into the second game. I mean, they're not going to get much worse. So it was, like you said, I think it's good to get that win. Pity we didn't get a bonus point. I'm going to ask you just to play devil's advocate and to just stir the pot. What do we think of Jesse Creel's captaincy? And do we think that it's maybe also slightly at fault for it didn't seem like there was a real stranglehold on the game, and I don't know if it's a ridiculous claim to make, but it is something to look at because your captain is supposed to be the glue and the motivational factor.
I think it's right to question the leadership hole that definitely seems to be there when Sia's not playing. Because we saw the team fall apart once Sia was forced to go off in the first test match.
Yeah.
And I think we looked, when we needed Eben to step up in the second half of this game when he came on, I felt like his presence was definitely felt. And I think at the end of the day, it's also horses for courses, right? Sia's a very experienced 2-time World Cup winning captain. I think that's got a lot of value to it. And I do think while you could argue that he has he's got an unorthodox style of leadership maybe, or not something that we so associate leadership with. He's more of a sort of straight talking, very kind of, I would say, very methodical captain in his own way, and less of the sort of brash personality. You have to question whether the dynamics in the squad are maintained when he's not there, 100%. And I don't know if Jesse's the one to blame.
Exactly. I wouldn't put it on him because Rassie obviously sees something in him that he's chosen him for. But it does sort of, I think Sia will be at the next World Cup if he doesn't get injured. Like, that seems to be the plan. But it sort of throws the whole long-term thing into a little bit of a shadow because they tried Eben at captain and he just couldn't do both. He couldn't perform his role as an enforcer and be a captain. And then with Jesse, they've given him a shout, but where do they go post Sia?
Sorry, I think you're hitting the nail on the head here in terms of this whole thing about question marks and all these question marks that have now sort of, after that defeat to Australia and with the statistics around the squad and all the players, and if we look at ages, etc., I think that's where the panic anyway comes from me and maybe a large fraction of the South African fan base, is that there's a lot of question marks around the squad, various question marks, from identity through to, when are players too old to perform, who captains when Sia's not there. Some of our positions, we don't even know who's the best guy, particularly the front row. I think there's a lot of question marks there, and those question marks are not something we've been used to and the squad has been used to. And I think that's why the panic sets in now, because I think there's a clear understanding that the clock is ticking, and we've got from now until 2027, I think it's in September 2027, to figure out and answer all these question marks. And I think the longer Rassie maybe persists with certain elements, the more the time runs out. And I think that's where this panic comes from.
I think when you're looking at captains, you've got to remember you need to separate captaincy and leadership. And leadership is, Eben Etzebeth is leading the line-outs. Malcolm Marx is leadership for the scrums. Defense, I don't know exactly who's defense currently, but it used to be Dwayne Vermeulen. Tactical attack is Henry Pollard or Mani, whoever the 10 is. So that's leadership. In terms of captaincy, you got to consider who's talking to the ref and who's managing the game from that perspective. And I don't think Jesse, in this particular game, I'm not going to comment on the rest of it because I'm not 100% sure, but on this particular game, I don't think he did a good job because the ref was a little bit unorthodox. He wasn't blowing much for both sides, to be frank, but he wasn't blowing much. Like, there's a lot of infringements and he gave a lot of time for it to rectify itself without stopping the game. Right. And Jesse was running and complaining the whole time, and I think he was falling on the bad side of the ref in that communication. The ref actually went up to him and asked him to just stop coming to him. Yeah. And that's not what you want. You want to have open dialogue and not the ref shutting you down. So you need to find somebody who can communicate with the ref. And I think that's what Sia has done quite well, to find that balance of like, when can I approach, when can I not, how can I respect the ref's time. And maybe I would think somebody like Henry Pollard is maybe a better option. The problem is we're chopping and changing our fly halves all the time, so he's not a consistent guy in the team.
Yeah. It's just it's I guess with Sia you do have someone super dependable, and his form has been really good. So you're never concerned about having him in the squad just because he's the captain, which can be a real danger sometimes if the playing side falls away a bit.
Yeah, he definitely ticks the box that you want every captain to tick, and that he leads by example.
Exactly.
I think every time he puts on that jersey, he elevates his performances. Even if you look at his his season so far for the Sharks, comparatively to every time he's put the green and gold on, there's been a marked step up in his performance. So that's what you want. I think that's one of the main boxes he ticks as well.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else on the South Africa-Australia game that you want to get into?
I think the ref is an interesting point, but Klaus already alluded to it. I kept on screaming for the ref to blow his whistle, only because I just felt there was moments where there was just the infringements were so clear, and obviously he had his angles on it, and he wanted to maybe, as Klaus said, let the game figure itself out. Slightly frustrating. I think he's come into a lot of criticism from what I can see online afterwards, from both sets of fans. I think that's the problem that gets created if you're not blowing your whistle, and when an infringement happens, of course, you want to give the player the opportunity to roll away, but you can't have a conference call with the guy for half an hour, and then he eventually moves out of the ruck, and then you let it slide, and there was a couple moments, and so there was a couple infringements of South African players where he chose not to blow his whistle. So interesting angle. I don't know if I guess there's different approaches to this, but I think it does create a little bit of gray area as to when do you blow what and how long do you wait, etc. So, but high scoring game, very entertaining test match. So from that point of view, when people always look at what the referee's role is, and in my opinion is to give the best possible stage for the best, most possible entertaining game, and I think he did that.
Yeah. Let's use the Nthlabakanya case to talk about the squad traveling to New Zealand. It's come out in the media, I think, today that there's been an adverse finding in his tests, SA Rugby, and he claimed that it is a prescribed medication administered by a doctor that is not performance enhancing. Obviously, the headlines, and I guess the headlines are usually from, let's say the headlines from the rest of the world are South African forward in doping shock. Like that's and then if you read the comments, no one's read the article. It's, of course, the South Africans are doping.
Yeah.
What do we think is on the horizon here? Are we heading for a Deanti problem, or do you think it's literally just the normal spikes on the doping test, but he'll be fine because he's taken? They say the chosen phrase is that he's taken time. He's not going to travel so that he can fight this.
Well, I think there's two perspectives you have to look at. From a South African rugby perspective, I think it's always concerning if any athlete gets caught. It's not a good look. I also am very strict. I've spoken privately to people about Yannick Sinner, for example, where I just think it's a joke. I think athletes have to be held, even if it's in with consultation with the doctor, like you have to make sure, and even if you're an athlete, the list is public knowledge. Look at what the doctor gives you, go onto the website, the doping agency website, search the stuff you've been given and clear yourself, or make sure before you take anything. That's my opinion. So there is a concern there, particularly with the Deanti stories of old. Chili Boy Ralopele also got caught doping. Yeah. So there's a bit of a history there, maybe not too crazy, but there's a bit of a history there. But then the other side is the player's side, and I'm a little bit concerned for him because these things tend to take quite a long time. By the time it goes through all the instances, and if there choose to be appeals, etc., I wonder if he's going to get the time and be given the time playing rugby in order to keep his spot in the squad. I worry for him.
I don't understand if it's something, as he claims, it's been administered by a doctor, it's been overseen by a doctor. If it's something that he was aware of that he was not supposed to be taking, even if it's not performance enhancing, regardless, it's on the ban list. isn't there a way of coming out about it beforehand, before you get caught out?
But it's usually not. So it's usually not a specific medication that you take that is
Be
on
a
a list.
compound of
Exactly. There's something in specific medication that falls under substances that are either in a gray area or that are not allowed, that are performance enhancing and not performance enhancing. And my assumption is that it must be something to do with his health, because obviously he is a big guy. This is just purely an assumption. And that body to perform at a high level needs to be, it's superhuman what your body needs to take care of to move that much weight around at the force and at the pace that he does. So I'm not surprised that there's stuff that the guy needs to take to not
His
die.
heart pumping.
Yeah. I think we'll learn more as the story comes out, but it seems like SA Rugby is claiming like he was super open about it to them, and that this has come out and nobody's like trying to hide anything. It
didn't seem like there was too much shock. It was
No.
And maybe it's something that will just blow over and people will be like,
Exactly.
okay, well, he took cortisone and there's something in it that I don't know. I'm speaking out of my ass, but you know what I mean. It's like, it's not allowed, but it's not really gonna change anything. He took a bit of Ritalin.
But humor me. I mean, if we do look at the player side of it, let's say it does drag on a little. So I would hazard to guess that he probably misses the whole of the rugby championship now. The way these things go, in terms of like until they've sat down and he's appeared before the board and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
What if it comes out he is microdosing LSD for his health?
I don't know.
Is that
What
a
are the
health
rules?
Do people do that?
Yeah, depression.
Oh,
Yeah.
hectic.
If it's something like that, and then it's like, well,
Well, I mean,
We'll
I'm
see.
gonna. I don't know what he's taken. So
Yeah.
and whatever he's taken, I'm just trying to look. I'm trying to work through like the possible
Yeah.
scenarios here. I mean, if he misses the rugby championships, he's probably gonna have to. I don't know if he plays in the URC for the Lions. Then it depends if he's.
There's time before the November test, though.
Yeah,
and-
yeah. The thing is, he would have to then play in the URC and probably perform relatively well to get into those November test matches.
yeah. I
So
mean,
it's an interest. Again, it's
yeah. It's come at an opportune
Yeah.
time, because it's not to say that he would have gotten a chance against the All Blacks, because he is very new and he did get found out in that first game against Australia a little bit.
Yeah.
And that was a big jump in class. So maybe it would have just been beneficial for him to be part of a traveling group, just get more and more used to the environment. I'm hoping that it's not long. Like I guess we'll see. I think it all depends on
what it was.
what it was. I mean, our good friend Kagiso Rabada, he was back to Sweden in a hurry for that non-performance cocaine he did,
Was it booger sugar?
allegedly.
yeah.
Right. He's not going to New Zealand. They did announce the squad today. Should we read through it, or should we just assume that the listeners have seen it?
Give it a quick read, I think.
Right. We could have not. Then I didn't have to do this before the show.
What I can tell you is, be happy you're not reading out the names for the lady Springboks.
Is it
Hard
to pronounce?
I have not seen half of those names before in my life.
Right.
And I grew up in South Africa.
All right. Luther Jager, Peter Steph de Toy, Thomas de Toy, Jean-Luc Dupree, Eben Etzebeth, Vincent Koch, Sia Kulisi, Wilco Low, Malcolm Marx, Bongi Monambi, Franco Mostert, Oxen Che, Ruan Nokia, Quacha Smith, Erge Sneeman, Manus van der Merwe, Marco van Staden, Boan Venter, Jan-Hendrik Wessels, and Jasper Wieser. And the backs are Damien Dialende, Andre Estesen, Apelele Fassi, Sasha Feinbergen-Gomezulu, Ethan Hooker, Jesse Creel, Cheslin Colby, Willie Leroux, Marnie Libok, Makazole Mapimpi, Kanan Moody, Andre Pollard, Kobus Reinach, Mone van den Berg, Grant Williams, and Damien Willemse. I think the standout one that all of us were missing is not there. Or the one that we all wanted to be there, which is Vincent Tutuka.
Yeah, he unfortunately didn't make the cut. I mean, I think the squad is pretty standard. Like, I don't think there's anybody there who doesn't deserve to be there.
No.
But yeah, I guess we would have liked to have seen him, just because we believe he had such a great performance against Italy, especially.
I think Rassi alluded to the fact that had the Australia performance, the first one, not been so bad, there was players who would have gotten a sniff in the second one who couldn't then, because he had to revert to
Old tactics.
old tactics, safe. And I think I might be mistaken, but I think he did mention him. He definitely mentioned Ethan Hooker in that, and I do think Vincent was probably part of that. Is there anyone else that you're missing from this? if I ask you who you're bummed that they're taking, you're probably going to say Bongi Bonami, but that's just where we are.
No. I think generally it's there's no major surprises. I think that's fair. I think we've had a couple of injuries as well. Kurtley Arendse is out. Edwin van der Merwe is out with injury.
Yeah.
But a lot of the boys that had issues in going into the second test match have all been cleared. So that's pretty good. My only big thing, and I harp on about it a little bit, is just there's about 6 or 7 players that I think if you can almost 100% say are not going to make it to the next World Cup just because of age. So you've got Willie Leroux, who's 36. You've got Vincent Koch, who's 35.
Yeah.
You've got there's a host of guys that are sort of 34 and older.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to sort of figure out for myself what the plan is. I don't know if Rassie seems like someone who's very methodical. And of course, there was a blip now. We're losing to Australia in the first test match that would have changed some of his plans. But I think in my mind, this must all be part of a plan to kind of give these players a send-off, also keep a bit of stability, because otherwise there's no real reason to take as many of those guys that are definitely not going to make the next World Cup. That's kind of my thinking. I mean, I'm happy to hear what you guys say, and I think, and I hope that means that the November Test series will be the time where players are really thrown into the mix.
I think the Springboks are currently in a position where everybody expects them to win, so the pressure is there for them to win. As soon as they have a mishap like against Australia, the whole country is up in arms, like, oh my God, what's going on? Like, are we about to fall from grace? So there's a lot of pressure from, especially the fans, and a lot of expectations from the world, essentially that, oh, well, we're used to South Africa winning, they should continue winning. So that needs to be upheld to a certain degree, as well as continuing some sort of evolution into whatever rugby it is that you're trying to achieve. In this case, Tony Brown-esque running rugby. So you're trying to find that balance. On top of that, you're obviously trying to stay up in the rankings because at the end of the year, we've got the selections. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and I think that's why he's taking guys along that, as you said, will probably not make it to the World Cup.
Sure. It's we spoke before the Rugby Championship started about how tricky it is going to New Zealand for 2 games, and we spoke about the Eden Park game. And that's why I think we can't be upset, disappointed, surprised that he's taken such a experienced squad there. The loss to Australia first up just means that these 2 games are very important in terms of, I think we might have to win both of them. I know you guys said that, or Dom, you said that you might foresee even an Australia victory against New Zealand, meaning that maybe we don't have to win both of them. But it's definitely not going to be easy playing 2 games in New Zealand, and that's why I think you take your tested and trialed players and you go out there and give it a run. I mean, if they win both of those, I don't think any one of the South African supporters will turn around and be like, yeah, but I wish he'd taken like 1 or 2 younger players along.
I mean, never mind beating them twice. We just want the Eden Park victory. Let's be honest. If we lose the championship but we won in Eden Park, I think we'll be even more stoked.
I think it's important, yeah.
Let's talk about I saw some stuff online about the selection of Ethan Hooker, quite interesting, because in terms of options at center, we have quite a few. And Rassie spoke very actively about wanting to look at Ethan at center. So that's interesting. I don't know what you guys think of that. Obviously, we have a couple injuries on the wing, which he can also fulfill. So I think that his ability to fill both those positions. But do you think we might see him? I don't think starting, but maybe coming in and trying to try him at 13.
I'd love to. I would have loved to have seen Kane Moody at 13. I think 13 and 12 are the positions we need to be building on the most in terms of depth. And we seem to be making the same, I'm not going to say error because we still won 2 World Cups with this, but like we seem to be going down the same sort of nerve-wracking situation where we don't have depth at those positions. And you've got the likes of a Kane Moody who's 22 years old and could solidify that position as his own for years to come, or an Ethan Hooker for that matter. So yeah, I would like to see them. But yeah, if you're going to go to Eden Park, then if anything,
isn't Rassie's hand forced a little bit because of the injuries to Kurtley and to Edwill? Because how many other like viable options do we have at wing?
Mapimpi.
Mapimpi,
who also is 35, so Dosa doesn't make the next World Cup.
yeah, he's in, and I wouldn't be surprised if he might get one of the New Zealand games just because of
Experience
his
and-
experience and maybe what they're going to try and play. But I mean, it's unfortunate because I think for Kane and Moody, you really want to see like a full season at Springbok 13. You know, you just want him to get his chance and establish himself. But it's like you said, he's so young. If he gets his chance at 13 in a year or even after the next World Cup, he's still young enough to maybe go to 2 more.
Yeah.
What do we think? Just throw it in the room. What do we think the first team looks like a little bit against New Zealand? A la Test 1 or a la Test 2, Australia?
A la Test 2.
I think Test 2, but obviously with guys like Urban starting, but very, very predictable. I think conservative.
Yeah.
The first one is Wellington, or was the first one Eden Park?
I couldn't tell you.
Eden Park.
Okay, yes.
Eden Park is the first one. Yeah.
It's a big one. Also 8 o'clock in the morning, which makes it very interesting.
Also, I'm sorry, maybe this is a good way to segue into, if you look at the way Argentina beat New Zealand,
That's what I was going to go into. Yeah.
Yeah.
it would point in the direction of a la Test 2.
Yes.
You want to have big, consistent guys up front, and then you want to have absolute pace out back, because those guys were struggling against Argentina. They had 40 missed tackles.
That's insane. Also a lot of ill discipline.
Yeah,
mean-
it was actually a very Argentinian performance by the All Blacks.
Yeah. All right, you said it. Let's segue into Argentina beating the All Blacks for the first time at home. A lot of yellow cards. I think 3 in total for the All Blacks, and a very, very good performance by Argentina. It's very hard to pinpoint. I think before this weekend, I don't think you would say that Argentina were necessarily down and out, but they weren't peaking the same way we thought they would peak once they beat the British and Irish Lions, you know. But now it seems like they're doing really well. Now question marks are around New Zealand again, and sort of like whenever you think that here we go, they're getting their momentum back, they just get caught. They just get dragged back by something.
Did you see the fallout in the New Zealand sort of press? Absolute meltdowns.
Is it?
In response to it? Some guys saying this is one of the worst performances ever by an All Black team.
Oh, wow.
Completely taking the team apart. Some guys saying online, I think we should just calm down a little bit here.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and it is alarm bells, and it's not alarm bells that you'd necessarily associate with the All Blacks, not to this level. The All Blacks have always been a side. If they did lose, there was sort of this kind of grace to them, and they knew that they would probably come back. But there are a lot of question marks. You know, I mean, for example, the perfect example, someone like Wallace Satiti, who a year ago people were saying should have won the Rugby Player of the Year, losing out to Peter Steph du Toit, rightly so in my opinion, particularly after his performance in that World Cup final. But he's just not kicked on from there, you know, and there's serious question marks. People saying, should we drop this guy, you know, and it's not something we associate. I'm so used to growing up with the All Blacks that young players come in, they impress, and then they irritate the shit out of you as a South African rugby fan for the next 10 years because they're so damn good. And that's also interesting to see, is like the pathways in all these countries have changed in terms of how you develop players because of the lack of Super Rugby. And it seemed to be quite cut and dye back in the day. You know, you just test them against the best Australian players, you test them against the best South African players, and you know they come out the other end. But same thing for South Africa. You know, you're not battle hardened the same you were, or you're not going to battle the same way you used to as a young player, and the coaches are having to get used to it. So I think we'll see the fallout from this for quite some time. And I think it's not without reason that global rugby seems to be there seems to be such parity at the moment amongst the top sort of 6, 7 sides in the world at the moment.
No,
Absolutely.
I think New Zealand's struggling with a couple positions, but especially number 9. They've got Cam Roygaard, they've got Finley Christie, and then they've got one other dude that I'm just blanking on his name right now. And like they're all 3 of them are good in their own right, but the 3 of them get paired with 2 different fly halves in Damian McKenzie and Bowden Barrett, and they keep on switching and chopping and changing. And I think that they're really struggling for a team that plays such running rugby. They're really struggling to find that first receiver that can manage the game from there. On top of that, Will Jordan had one of his worst performances ever. I mean, not to say he played poorly or like really badly, just it wasn't up to top notch like he usually is, right?
Yeah.
So guys who would turn a game like that around again weren't there.
Yeah.
And they only lost within seven points. So they still got a bonus point.
29-23.
The last kick of the game to get a bonus point. Yeah.
So they still got a bonus point. So it wasn't like they were completely like overrun by the Argentinians.
No, I think also just to put it in perspective, obviously it's tough for South Africans to sit here and say, oh, they nobody knows where the All Blacks are. But I think you have to look at it in the context of when South Africa loses with one game, it's because we're constantly trying to redevelop ourselves. New Zealand, under Scott Robinson, were at least heralded by a lot of people as they're going to be back because Scott Robinson was supposed to be the guy.
The Crusaders genius.
And I think there's probably a little bit of a disappointment in New Zealand that they haven't as quickly reclaimed their title, their throne as dominant rugby force. It's always like you said, that's just amongst the top 4-5 teams. There's so much parity, and you never know on each day who's going to win. And it doesn't seem like any team will be miles ahead anymore. So I think from that point of view, the All Black fans are probably just frustrated because I think it was supposed to be different.
And the Kiwi fans can't be too hard on their team because the Los Pumas really played well.
They did.
And they've got star players in it. Matera carries like an absolute demon. Carreras is fire. They didn't even have... Did they have Boffelli on the team? I don't think they had Boffelli on the team.
I don't think so, no.
When that guy is in, he can also kick from like 60 meters out at balls. Chocobaras is arguably one of the best centers out there currently. So they've got star potential, no, not even star potential. They've got stars in their team.
Are we low-key quite glad that there's no game in Argentina for us this year?
100%.
That it's basically
a hostile environment that in Buenos Aires. My
basically
goodness,
happening in South African downtown there in London.
They're in London, of course.
No, that definitely benefits us, and I think that's. I mean, look, Argentina need to do what they need. South Africa and Argentina, I think, need to do what they need to do in terms of revenues and stuff. And I think Twickenham from that perspective makes sense. But let's not get too deep into that because we unpacked it before. But I think, Argentina are probably after beating the All Blacks going, damn.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, it's parity. It is one winner team, and that could give Argentina a shot.
Yeah. There's positives and negatives to each team that you can look at, and you can look at each one and be like, none are streaks ahead in their performance. Everyone's sort of, it just depends on who fires on which day. I think the fact that we play 2 games in New Zealand could be tough for us.
Oh, it's going to be hard.
I think
if we win this championship, it's going to be
one of the best
successes for us. Yeah.
But how great would it be to see an Argentina or an Australia fight for that top spot? Because it's just.
Imagine Argentina goes through and wins it.
I think we also have to check ourselves a little bit because I think it was before the British and Irish Lions series we were talking about like rugby in Australia being like in the pits, and I mean there was so many signs pointing towards it. Like it's not like we gained it out of we pulled it out of nothing, but just seeing them compete again and being so good and seeing Argentina on the up and up, it's so much more fun.
There's even talk now in Australia that I've been seeing online of people saying, do whatever you can in your power to get some of the rugby league boys back. So some of the boys that have moved over to league, the one guy's got a really long name, I don't remember it, but there's 2 or 3 guys that they say they could probably get them back before that World Cup, and these guys would be transformative.
And a home World Cup is...
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that, I think. And I mentioned it a couple of episodes ago where I say, excuse me, with rugby union, there's definitely way more of an element of sort of that nation building thing than I would argue with rugby league. Rugby league definitely happens predominantly on sort of a club level.
Yes.
And I think you have the power as rugby union in Australia to say, hey guys, home World Cup, put on the gold jersey, let's go. We'll give you a 2-year contract, and similar to what they did with Falau.
What if they just say goodbye to their morals and get old Israel Falau back there?
I don't think they'll do that.
Fine. So there's clearly a line.
There's a line. There's a line in the sand.
Good on them.
But especially to your point, if you can get those guys back, I mean, look at the game on the weekend, right? They got very close to beating us back to back. And then you look at the disruption that they had in their team. Granted, we went in with disruption. We were already missing like our top players. But they had disruption in the game. So they weren't necessarily prepared for it. They had to adjust. They lost Nick White early on. Tate McDermott came in. Sure, he's a phenomenal player.
Played very well, yeah.
But Nick White is, with his shithousery and whatnot, like he really gets under our skin. He gets under anybody's skin. So that's like an aspect that you got to take into account. I mean, that try he scored, or that he initiated, where Toole went through and scored. What was it, Jacob Toole, I think? The new guy, the debutant.
Yeah.
I mean, that is vision, get to the mark, play
For sure.
it.
No, he did
and
very
nobody's
well,
there to
yeah.
defend it. You know, that's the
Isn't
kind of thing that
is
comes with
the
experience.
sevens player,
Tool?
Tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jesus,
And that guy's
lightning,
got
eh?
wheels, eh?
Yes.
I didn't understand why we didn't target the right wing more
Yeah.
with our up and unders to like put him under pressure as a debutant. But anyway, that's tactics that I'm not going to pretend like I understand. And then they also lost Sweli, and they also lost right.
Yeah.
So disruption, and then they still came really
For
close
sure.
to being there. So you know, very very good teams. If they had more depth, fuck.
We spoke about, or I think we've spoken a little bit more in depth about what we think South Africa need to do in New Zealand. A very interesting part of this rugby championship now is Argentina traveling to Australia for 2 games, because the way that both of those teams plays, it's very sort of at each other's throat, very attacking. Should be 2 good games. Do we think Argentina can beat Australia in Australia?
Yes.
I think so. Maybe I'm not doing the Australian fans too much of justice, but I think if I look at the prospect of going to Eden Park, for example, this fortress, I don't know if, because Australia's kind of not necessarily had the best run of things in rugby union over the last few years, I feel like Australia, it's going to take them some time to sort of build up this fortress element. So I think from that perspective, I kind of think to myself, if there's one country I maybe at the moment don't mind going to play, or at least coming into the tournament, I don't mind going to play, it's probably Australia, if you're thinking of Argentina, right?
It's not going to be a hostile crowd. It's not going to be like a
cold
crazy
one,
energy.
Yeah.
But also generally those stadiums, they usually play in like rugby league stadiums or even in
cricket
Aussie
stadiums.
rules. So it's
Yeah.
like
this.
they're so far away.
Yeah.
I don't know if that takes a little bit of the bite
Sure.
away from.
I think it does. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an interesting element. That's why I think the Argentinians will be backing themselves.
What is our hope for this as South African fans? A 1-1?
Yeah.
Just a little.
1-1 would be fantastic.
Everyone gets a win.
Maybe even just a draw.
No,
Both games draws.
No bonus points.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be ideal.
right.
But Argentina definitely have a chance, as well as Australia. I mean,
It's a wild thing, but there is a world where South Africa end up winning this thing because we beat Argentina twice, once in South Africa and in Twickenham.
Could be.
Because Australia, they beat each other. Argentina and Australia beat each other 1-1. We maybe take one off the New Zealanders, 1-1, and before you know it, we're lifting the rugby championship at Twickenham.
with like 13 points.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if it goes down to bonus points.
Yeah. Well, then it's not looking good for us currently. No. Also, I mean, if you're a betting person and you're listening to this for some advice, do not put any money on anything we've said, because we have been woefully wrong in the past with our predictions. But we just like to fantasize a little bit.
Could be a 4-way tie.
Anything else rugby championship wise, looking back, looking forward? We've got a week's break now at least, so we can focus on the Women's World Cup, which is kicked off.
Brilliant.
First games have taken place, and it seemed like it was routes all round. Seemed like everyone put like big scores past up opponents. I'm going to go through some of them. England beat USA 69-7. Australia beat Samoa 73-0. Scotland beat Wales 38-8. It's nice to see that the Welsh women fall right in line with the Welsh men there, you know? Just don't overshadow them. Canada beat Fiji 65-7.
Yeah.
But I don't think Fijian women's rugby is the
and
same as...
Canadians women's rugby is right up there. I think they're one of the top 5 seeds in the tournament.
They're third in the ranking.
Yeah. France beat Italy 24-0. Ireland beat Japan 42-14. South Africa beat Brazil 66-6. It's definitely the devil work there.
Naughty.
And New Zealand beat Spain 55-8. So it's big wins all round, but there wasn't any big team clashes yet, you know?
So South Africa looking like having a relatively decent chance of getting out the group from what I've seen, only because both Italy and France are tough sides, but neither of them are like considered like one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
So if we can just get a result against one of them, we might be able to sneak through. We did beat Brazil relatively convincingly, well, very convincingly.
Yeah.
I just don't know how. I think they're by a long way the worst side in the tournament.
So I think it's also now we play Italy next. That'll be telling.
So you would think beating Italy is vital, because what did you say, 24-0 to France?
Yeah.
Hopefully they kind of somehow get that result, and then you would think at least get through to the next phase, and who knows?
That would be great. It'd be great for women's rugby in South Africa.
Italy is currently ranked higher than we are.
Yeah.
So they are considered the better team. And I think France is ranked 5th.
Yeah.
So they're not far from the top. But the crazy thing with women's rugby is the ranking. If you look at the ranking system, it's like So it's ranked out of 100.
Right.
And if you look at like the men's, I think currently New Zealand's like 91 points or something like that,
exactly.
right? England has 97 points. And then the next best team is like, I don't know,
Yeah,
Canada or something
there's
like
such
that.
a big golfing
they're
class
like, they're like 89 or 87.
Yeah.
I think it's very typical of sort of a professional women's sport that's still establishing itself, because there's
where money is.
you either have professionals or you've got part-timers like in a team like Brazil. Big shout out to Swayze de Brain. There's been so much talk about the fact that someone of his stature has taken over the women's side and embraced it to its fullest. Apparently they've completely turned around everyone's fitness. They're living and breathing and playing like full-time professionals, which I think is going to be telling. And maybe that world ranking doesn't do us as much justice, and we can try and
I was going to say the same thing. That seems like, especially in recent months, there's only been positive news when it comes to results coming out of South African women's rugby. So let's see. It would be great to beat Italy, because then I think it's not guaranteed, but it's like, I think then it's pretty.
We should then get through. Yeah. It would be interesting to see how we perform against France.
Yeah,
because
that's the big game.
That's the big game, and it's like, well, France is similar to the B side that we played against the Black Ferns, then maybe we could even beat them.
We'll take it one step at a time.
We'll take one step at a time. But as Dominic said, currently the progress is looking amazing.
I think maybe that could be a nice segment for next week. Just a little bit more of an in-depth look at the Women's World Cup. Obviously, we might already be able to preview the squad for the New Zealand game, depending how early Rassie comes out. But I think that's something to look forward to next week. Little shout out to the Australians who put us to the sword there in the cricket.
Oh yeah,
jeez!
But we won the series, bro.
We won the series, but that was
tough.
That was tough.
No, that was. I was like, oh, maybe we get the 4-3-6,
4-3-8
game recap.
Yeah, that didn't work out like that.
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah.
I think we were out after like 25 overs or something like that.
And then I think shout out to Tommy Fleetwood for winning his first time on the PGA Tour.
What a way to do it as well.
Long time coming.
He almost didn't look happy at first. He sort of putted it in. He just walked to his caddy and he was like, "Oh, thanks for the game." And then he burst out in emotions.
If you fumble that many times, I think it's hard for you to believe when you do get it across the line.
There's something broken in that man.
Nice also to see Justin Rose watching and filming.
Very tight knit, that European Ryder Cup team. I think,
I think could be the same.
Could
12,
be exactly the same.
And I don't think that's ever happened before.
Yeah,
the same 12
and not
players in the back-to-back.
You think John Rahm's going to get in there?
I think he would be crazy not to pick him.
Yeah,
okay.
He won the live.
He's won the live,
and he's
series,
okay.
He's just he's like Tyrrell Hatton. He's a team golfer. He brings the
guy.
And with the style of gameplay he has, he's really good in partner golf because he can hit really aggressive shots.
If Keegan Bradley, which is looking every more likely, picks himself in the team, then Europe has a real chance, because that's not easy.
I don't think, because I saw a thing yesterday, not to get too deep into it. I saw it yesterday. The guy was saying if he picks himself, he has to either leave Cameron Young or Sam Burns out.
But they've been playing terribly.
No, they've beat him though. The last 3 months in a row, they beat him almost in every single tournament except the Tour Championship.
But he's higher on the list, I think.
Yeah, because he played really well this week. But in the last 3 months, in every single tournament, both of them have finished higher than him.
Well, unfortunately, we don't do that anymore because none of you listened to our other sports segments. So we will not grace you with any more opinions on golf or cricket. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Tune in again next week for some more rugby insights from the couch.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bench Opinions. 3 idiots with amateur analysis.